Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed how people dread being alone, as if solitude is a punishment? We cling to noise, screens, gossip, and endless chatter, terrified of meeting the person we carry within. But let me ask you this. When was the last time you sat alone, truly alone, and felt powerful instead of empty? The truth is, alone does not mean lonely. Alone means untamed. Alone means free. Alone means powerful. This speech will peel away every lie you've been told about solitude and show you that the moment you stand alone, you stand unshakable. If you watch till the end, you will understand why those who master solitude cannot be manipulated, cannot be broken, and cannot be used. Stay with me and reclaim the strength you forgot you had. Being alone is not an exile from the world. It is a return to your center. Loneliness is a craving for connection without self-awareness. Aloneness is communion with yourself. When you stand apart, you see things as they are, not through the eyes of a crowd hungry for approval. Society teaches you to fill every empty moment, afraid you might hear your true thoughts echo back. Yet it's in this very silence that you find clarity. Here, your mind unclutters, your desires simplify, your power gathers. The person who walks alone fears no departure. They have built their own fire to sit beside. They do not need borrowed warmth. This frightens those who trade in gossip and shallow praise, because they cannot control the one who does not beg for company. In solitude, you discover that you are not just enough. You are more than enough. You realize your worth does not rise and fall on someone's call or absence. The one who can sit with their own silence can withstand any storm. Use your alone time wisely. It is a forge. Read, think, dream, create. Let solitude test you, strengthen you, refine you. There is no greater rebellion in a world of noise than to become comfortable in your own company. One day you will see you were never lonely, you were just unfamiliar with your own depths. And once you know them, you will fear no solitude ever again. Stand alone, not as an outcast, but as your own source of power. And you will never be lonely. You will be free. There is a world of difference between being alone and being lonely. Yet so many people confuse the two. And in doing so, they rob themselves of one of life's most profound gifts: solitude. Loneliness is a hunger for connection that is unmet, an ache that gnaws at the spirit, because it believes something essential is missing. It is the mind whispering that you are not enough on your own, that your existence must be validated by someone else's presence, someone else's approval. But to be alone is entirely different. Aloneness is not a lack, but a space, a sacred space where you stand whole, unencumbered by the demands of others, free to hear your own heartbeat echo back to you in the silence. Most people run from solitude because they have been conditioned to equate being alone with rejection. From childhood, we're surrounded by noise: family, friends, classmates, crowds, chatter, screens, and endless streams of updates that keep us tethered to a web of constant reassurance. The moment the noise dies down, panic rises, because in that quiet, the truth of who we are begins to surface. Loneliness is born when you sit in that silence and believe you are lacking simply because no one else is there to tell you otherwise. But consider this: the deepest parts of you, The strongest parts are never found in a crowd. They emerge when you stand apart. When you walk alone through your own thoughts, you discover just how vast your inner landscape really is. There is a stillness inside you that cannot be accessed when you are tangled in the needs and opinions of others. Solitude is not the absence of people. It is the presence of yourself. When you are truly alone, you are forced to face the unpolished truth. The masks drop. There is no one to impress, no one to convince, no one to please. The voice in your head is no longer drowned out by other voices telling you who you should be. And though at first that can feel terrifying, because it strips away your excuses and illusions, it is also the beginning of a profound kind of freedom. In loneliness, you crave company to fill the void. In aloneness, you realize there is no void. You are complete as you are, and other people become additions to your fullness, not band-aids for your emptiness. The irony is that people who never learn to stand alone often feel the loneliest, even in crowded rooms. They must always be surrounded, yet they feel unseen. They must always be validated, yet they never feel truly valued. When you understand this difference, you begin to see your time alone not as a punishment, but as an opportunity. The hours you spend in your own company become a sanctuary where you can untangle your thoughts, heal old wounds, dream new dreams, and cultivate the kind of strength that does not shatter when someone leaves or when the world grows cold. Those who mistake aloneness for loneliness spend their lives fleeing from themselves, stitching together relationships, distractions, and noise to muffle the quiet truth that they have never learned to sit with their own soul. But those who choose solitude on purpose transform into something rare. They become people who carry a certain calm in their eyes, a depth that cannot be faked, a self-possession that cannot be purchased or borrowed. To be alone is to be powerful, because you are no longer dependent on the fleeting promises of company. You do not fear being abandoned when you know you will never abandon yourself. You do not fear silence when you have learned that silence is not empty, but full of answers. You do not fear rejection when you understand that your worth does not decrease when someone else turns away. There is a simple, ancient truth buried in the experience of being alone. Everything you truly need is already within you. Your strength, your clarity, your resilience, your peace. These are seeds planted deep in the soil of your being, and solitude is the sunlight that helps them grow. When the world tempts you to believe that to be alone is to be lonely, remember this. Loneliness is the longing for yourself, misunderstood as the longing for another. When you return to yourself fully, you discover that you were never truly alone. You were just waiting to come home. From the moment we open our eyes to this world, we are trained to fear being alone. It begins with tiny gestures, the way a child cries when left in a room, the way parents hush that fear with toys, noise, and company. As we grow, the world keeps feeding us the same lesson. To be valuable, you must be surrounded. To be safe, you must be attached. To be happy, you must belong to a crowd. We are given friendships we do not understand, asked to mingle when we'd rather be still, taught to measure our worth in how many people call us, text us, comment and like, and show up. We are told that if we are alone on a Friday night, there must be something wrong with us. We are not fun enough, not loved enough, not enough at all. This myth of constant company burrows so deep into our bones that solitude begins to feel like a threat. The idea of sitting alone at a cafe, of traveling alone, of simply staying home with our own thoughts. These simple acts feel almost rebellious. We scroll through endless feeds, drowning the discomfort of silence with 100 strangers' noise. We join conversations that drain us, say yes to gatherings we don't enjoy, all to protect ourselves from the shame we've been taught comes with solitude. But what is so dangerous about being alone? Why does society make solitude feel like a crime? It is because solitude makes you powerful in a way that does not serve the world's machinery. A person who knows how to stand alone is harder to manipulate. They do not tremble when left out. They do not bend simply to be accepted. They do not shrink themselves to fit into boxes too small for their spirit. They are free. And freedom terrifies those who thrive on conformity. When you depend on constant company to feel whole, you become predictable, easy to control. You say what must be said to keep the circle intact. You act how you must act to avoid the terror of being cast out. This is why the myth of constant company is kept alive. It breeds dependence. It teaches you to trade your authenticity for belonging. It teaches you to suffocate your own voice to keep the crowd's applause. What happens, though, when you break this conditioning? When you realize you do not vanish when you stand alone? Suddenly the fear loses its teeth. You learn that you can eat alone and enjoy the taste. You can walk alone and hear the world more clearly. You can sit in your own home in silence and discover entire universes inside your mind. You realize the company you were taught to crave was often a distraction, a convenient way to avoid facing your own shadows. Solitude invites you into your own depths. It asks uncomfortable questions. It strips away the layers of who you pretend to be when others are watching. It leaves you naked with your fears, your wounds, your regrets. But it also leaves you open to your own truth. And truth is the birthplace of power. This is why the myth persists, because a person who has faced their own truth can no longer be bribed with shallow praise or cheap company. They know who they are in the quiet. They do not crumble when the room empties out. They do not chase after those who walk away. They stand rooted like an ancient tree, while the world around them shifts and shouts and scatters. Imagine how different life would feel if you trusted your own company as much as you trust the company of others. Imagine if you measured your days not by how many people you spoke to, but by how deeply you listened to your own thoughts. Imagine if you found yourself interesting enough, worthy enough, alive enough, without needing constant validation echoing back at you. To see through the myth of constant company is to break a spell. It is to reclaim your freedom. You do not need a room full of people to feel whole. You do not need endless chatter to feel alive. You are allowed to be your own companion, to sit with your dreams, your doubts, your questions, your stillness, and find that none of it is too much to bear. In fact, it is exactly what makes you unbreakable. The next time you feel that old panic when the room empties, remember this: you are not losing anything when you stand alone. You are gaining back the pieces of yourself you gave away just to belong. You are stepping outside the myth and into your own power. And when you do that, you become someone no one can exile, because you no longer exile yourself. When you choose to stand alone, something remarkable happens. The noise of the world fades into the background, and in its place, a clear, unwavering voice emerges, your own. Solitude becomes a gateway, a doorway to a space so vast and silent that you can finally hear what is real and what is not. Most people spend their days suffocating under the weight of opinions, demands, and distractions, carrying layers of other people's expectations like a cloak they never remove. In this state, they mistake echoes for truth and confusion for connection. But when you willingly step away from the chatter, you find out how much of that noise was never yours to begin with. In the world's eyes, being alone is often seen as being cut off, but the truth is, solitude is where your connection with yourself deepens, and through that your connection with everything else becomes clearer. Clarity is not born in crowds, it is born in the stillness, when you sit alone with your thoughts and allow the mind to settle, like silt sinking to the bottom of a glass of water. When the turbulence of other people's opinions calms, you see your own reflection without distortion. Standing alone strips away the illusions. It removes the need to posture, to perform, to pretend. It invites you to observe your life with an honesty that is almost ruthless but profoundly liberating. You begin to see which fears were inherited, which dreams were borrowed, which beliefs were forced upon you by voices louder than your own. And when you see all of this clearly, you begin to choose differently. Solitude creates a sacred distance between you and the world's constant demands. It gives you space to ask yourself, what do I truly want? What do I value? What do I fear? And why? These are questions no one can answer for you, not family, not friends, not lovers. And yet so many people live entire lifetimes without pausing long enough to ask them, because they are never alone long enough to hear the answers whisper back. When you stand apart, you realize that the mind, left unexamined, will replay the same scripts written by the world. But in solitude, you catch these scripts in action. You see the patterns, the old habits, the needless worries, the stories you tell yourself to stay small. Clarity comes when you no longer fight to drown out these truths, but instead welcome them to the surface. Alone, you witness your mind working. Alone, you get to know its tricks. And in knowing, you take your power back. In the silence of solitude, you also become aware of how much beauty you miss when you are lost in the noise. You notice how the sun feels different on your skin when you are not rushing to meet someone's demands. You hear the wind through the trees in a way you never did before. You taste food more fully. You breathe deeper. Solitude sharpens your senses because nothing is competing for your attention except the present moment. This clarity is not just peaceful. It is transformational. It realigns you with your purpose. It shows you what must be released, what must be nurtured, what must be created. Some of the greatest insights you will ever have come not when you are surrounded by advice, but when you are alone enough to hear your own wisdom. This is why those who embrace solitude often radiate a quiet power. They do not need permission to think, to change, to grow. They have given themselves permission already. Yet to reach this clarity, you must resist the pull of distraction. The moment solitude becomes uncomfortable, you will feel the urge to reach for your phone, for a friend, for anything to keep you from yourself. This is where the real strength is forged, when you sit with the discomfort instead of fleeing from it. Because if you can sit still through the noise of your mind, you will find that the noise was never endless. It is a passing storm. Beneath it, there is calm. Beneath it, there is you, clear, grounded, awake. Solitude is not isolation. It is not punishment. It is a return to your own depth, to the truth that hides behind daily distractions. And from this place of clarity, you will re-enter the world not as someone who must be led, but as someone who knows their own way. You will still enjoy company, but you will never cling to it out of fear. You will still speak, but your words will carry the weight of thoughtfulness. You will listen, but you will know when to stay silent. Solitude is the birthplace of vision. It is where your next right step reveals itself without the fog of other people's doubts clouding your path. It is the space where your soul breathes, stretches, and stands tall again. In solitude, you meet yourself, and in meeting yourself, you find the clarity to meet the world with eyes wide open. When you choose solitude, when you step away from the need for constant company, you discover something most people never touch in their entire lives. The truth that your deepest power does not come from what the world gives you, but from what already lives within you. There is an endless scramble for recognition and approval out there, people striving for status, applause, likes, followers, titles. And yet beneath all this frantic reaching is a quiet, stubborn emptiness that can never be filled from the outside. The paradox is this: as long as you believe your power comes from other people, you remain weak. You will forever adjust yourself to fit their expectations. You will say what they want to hear. You will bury your own truth under layers of politeness and fear of rejection. You will shrink when they disapprove and puff up when they applaud, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. But when you stand alone and let the noise fade, you find the cords that tie you to this endless performance. And you cut them, one by one. True power is not loud or boastful. It does not beg to be noticed. It does not need an audience to exist. It is quiet, steady, rooted deep inside the person who trusts their own company. This is why solitude feels threatening to the one who depends on the world for their worth. Because when they are alone, they meet themselves. And often they find there is nothing there that feels solid. But for the one who has chosen solitude willingly, being alone is an encounter with the strongest parts of themselves. There, in the silent spaces between distractions, you find the voice that has waited patiently beneath all the borrowed opinions. This voice is not desperate to please. It does not bend or bargain for approval. It speaks quietly, but with a certainty that cannot be shaken by the crowd's shifting moods. This is your inner source of power, and it is only in solitude that you learn to trust it. When you lean into this source, you realize you do not need anyone to agree with you, to know what is right for you. You do not need the world to see your worth for it to exist. You do not need to perform your life for an audience. The applause can come or go. You stand unshaken. A person who draws power from within is unsettling to those who rely on borrowed strength. People will test you. They will push at your boundaries to see if you really stand alone or if you are just pretending. But the one who has faced their solitude is not easily rattled. They have sat with their fears and made peace with their doubts. They have learned to comfort themselves when the world goes silent. They do not flinch when the crowd walks away, because they never built their foundation on the crowd to begin with. This is the freedom that solitude gives you. You become your own anchor. You learn to hold steady when storms come. You learn to breathe through uncertainty. You discover that self-respect is worth more than borrowed validation. You may walk into rooms alone, but you walk in whole. The irony is that when you master your own solitude, when you no longer crave to be filled by the world, you often attract deeper, truer connections. People sense the difference between someone who needs company to feel alive and someone who shares company because they are already alive within themselves. The first drains others, demanding reassurance. The second inspires, inviting others to stand fully in their own power too. Solitude is not about building walls to keep people out. It is about building a sanctuary within yourself, a place you can retreat to when the noise gets too loud, when the world tries to sway you from your truth. In this sanctuary, you restore yourself. You listen. You remember what you stand for. You gather your strength, not from what others think of you, but from the knowledge that no opinion can define you. There is nothing more magnetic than a person who needs nothing, not because they are cold or detached, but because they have found the wellspring of power inside themselves. They can love freely, because their love is not rooted in fear of being alone. They can speak honestly because they do not fear losing approval. They can stand apart when needed, because they know solitude will not destroy them, it will renew. So let the world misunderstand you if it must. Let them wonder how you can sit alone and still look so certain. Let them project their own fears onto your solitude. None of it matters. Because when you are alone yet whole, when you know your power does not drip from other people's hands, but flows from your own depths, you become unshakable. And an unshakable soul is the quiet revolution this noisy world secretly longs for. There is something quietly unsettling about a person who can stand alone, who does not flinch when left out, who does not chase approval or fold under the weight of other people's judgments. It unsettles others because it exposes a truth they often wish to deny. That true power does not come from belonging to the herd, but from the courage to stand apart from it when needed. Society has always felt uneasy around the self-reliant, because they cannot be easily swayed, sold to, or shamed into submission. They do not feed the endless cycle of insecurity that keeps so many systems running smoothly. From the time we are children, we are taught in subtle ways to seek the comfort of the group, to want to be liked, to want to be included, to fear standing out too much. The rules are simple. Fit in, do not cause trouble, do not stand alone for too long. We are taught that to be separate is to be vulnerable, that strength comes from numbers. But look closer and you will see the opposite is true. Herds do not breed strength, they breed dependency. They protect you only as long as you do not threaten the shape of the herd itself. Step too far outside the accepted lines, think too differently, refuse to echo what everyone else is saying, and the herd will remind you just how conditional its comfort really is. Self-reliant persons dangerous to this unspoken order. They do not need the group to tell them who they are. They do not trade pieces of themselves for approval. They do not swallow their truth to keep the peace. They will not play the role assigned to them just to be liked. And so the herd often tries to push such a person back into place with gossip, criticism, cold shoulders, whispered doubts. It tries to shame them back into line. Why? Because a free soul is a mirror. It shows others what they have given up for comfort. It reflects the smallness of their compromises, the quiet betrayal of their own inner voice. And it tempts them to remember the wildness they buried beneath the need to belong. Nothing unsettles the collective more than someone who does not crave its validation. But this fear is not a reason to abandon your solitude or soften your edges. It is proof that you are tapping into something real, something society would rather keep buried under layers of distraction and noise. It is the quiet power of knowing you can walk away and still be whole. It is the strength of speaking when your voice trembles, but your heart knows it must be said. It is the calm of sitting in silence while others fill the air with empty talk. To be self-reliant does not mean you reject people or live in bitterness. It means you approach them from a place of wholeness. You do not need them to complete you. You choose them freely. You do not fear their leaving because you do not lose yourself when they go. And when you do connect, you connect more deeply because you are not performing. There is no hidden bargain for approval. There is just you, standing in your truth, meeting another as they are. This kind of presence changes rooms. It shifts conversations. It makes shallow games impossible to sustain. Some will be drawn to you, others will keep their distance, unable to stand the discomfort of a person they cannot easily place in a box. Let them. The presence of a self-reliant soul is not for everyone. It is a quiet invitation for others to find the same strength within themselves. But not everyone is ready to answer that call. The world will always feel a little threatened by those who stand alone, and that is as it should be. It is the mark that you are not easy to mold, that your mind cannot be bought for cheap praise, that your spirit cannot be corralled by the shifting winds of popularity. It is the sign that you belong to yourself first, and that is the truest form of freedom there is. When you feel the pressure to shrink back into the herd, to smooth your rough edges, to silence your inconvenient truths, pause and remember this. The world needs people who stand apart, people whose strength does not come from echoing the crowd, but from listening deeply to the quiet voice that speaks when the noise is gone. Stand alone when you must. Let them gossip. Let them misunderstand you. Let them whisper that you have changed, because you have. You have traded the fragile safety of the herd for the unshakable ground of your own self-respect. And when you stand there, strong in your solitude, you do not just liberate yourself. You remind others that they too can be free. Most people see solitude as empty time, wasted, hollow, uncomfortable. They treat it like a gap to be filled with noise, distraction, or the company of anyone who will answer the call. But when you shift your understanding of solitude, you begin to see it for what it truly is. Not emptiness, but fertile ground. Solitude is a forge. It is a space where you turn silence into strength, time alone into transformation. It is where you lay down the armor you wear for the world and stand unguarded before your own thoughts, fears, and hidden truths. Turning solitude into strength does not happen by accident. It is a choice, a discipline, almost an art. Most people flee the moment they feel the first sting of discomfort that silence brings. They reach for their phone, the television, someone to text or meet up with, anything to mute the unsettling echo of their own mind speaking honestly to them. But the few who resist this urge discover something extraordinary. On the other side of that discomfort, clarity, insight, and a deeper, unshakable backbone. To make solitude your ally, you must treat it with reverence. Do not see your time alone as a pause between real life. See it as sacred. Guard it, protect it from the constant demands of others. Carve out space that belongs only to you and fill it with intention. This is the time to read the books that stretch your thinking, to write down the words that sit heavy in your chest, to wrestle with your doubts without interruption. Sit in stillness and listen to the chaos of your thoughts settle. Let the noise of unfinished tasks and old regrets rise and fall like passing storms. The mind, when left alone long enough, will show you where you are stuck, where you are strong, where you are free. It will test you with shadows you've ignored, the parts of yourself you hide from others, and often from yourself. Most people think strength is built in front of others, in how you speak, how you stand your ground, how you defend yourself. But real strength is forged when no one is watching. It grows in the moments when you choose to face what frightens you, instead of running from it. Solitude gives you this chance daily. If you use it well, you come back to the world stronger than before. Solitude is where ideas are born that cannot breathe in crowded rooms. It is where the next bold step reveals itself, unclouded by the noise of opinions. When you allow yourself to sit quietly, you may find a vision waiting for you, an insight into who you could become if you stopped hiding behind constant distraction. Solitude is not isolation from life. It is an invitation to life's depths. Turn your alone time into a ritual. Maybe you light a candle and sit in the dark with only your thoughts for company. Maybe you walk under open sky, letting your mind wander down paths you never follow in conversation. Maybe you write, not for others to read, but for you to uncover your own truths. These simple acts, repeated often, train you to stand in your own presence without flinching. Do not fear the loneliness that sometimes comes. It is natural. At first, it will press on your chest like a weight, reminding you of your old hunger for company. But stay there. Breathe through it. Beneath that longing is a deeper layer, the discovery that your own company, though unfamiliar at first, holds everything you've been searching for outside yourself. Through solitude, you also learn to set boundaries that protect your energy. You become more careful with who you invite back into your circle, because you have felt how good it is to be clear-headed, undistracted, and honest with yourself. You no longer fear missing out, because you know what you gain when you choose to stay in and tend to your own soul instead of losing yourself in shallow company. The world will not applaud you for this. It will not understand right away. People may say you have become distant or too quiet. Let them talk. In time, they will see the difference in you. They will notice that your words carry more weight, your presence more calm authority. They will sense the fire you have built within, a fire no one can extinguish because it was not lit by their hands, but by your own. When you find yourself alone, do not fill the space too quickly. Sit in it. Honor it. Use it as the forge it is. Let solitude test you, break you open, heal you, and shape you into someone who cannot be easily swayed by praise or rejection. Turn your solitude into your sanctuary and watch as you return to the world with a backbone forged in silence and a spirit that knows how to stand firm no matter who stays or who leaves. Mastering solitude is not about shutting out the world forever or retreating to a cave to escape life's noise. It is about building a quiet strength within yourself that no rejection, betrayal, or sudden loss can dismantle. It is about developing an inner confidence that does not rely on anyone's constant approval to stand tall. This is how solitude becomes a crucible for unshakable confidence. It strips you bare of false securities and shows you exactly where you are fragile, then gives you the time and space to fortify those places until they are strong enough to withstand life's unpredictable storms. Most people believe that confidence is built in the gaze of others, that you grow stronger by being seen, celebrated, praised. And yes, sometimes encouragement does help us bloom. But there is a subtle trap here. When your confidence rests entirely on someone else's nod of approval, it is always at risk of vanishing the moment that nod is withdrawn. Praise can lift you, but its absence can drop you even lower if you have no solid ground beneath your feet. True confidence, the kind that cannot be broken, is built in solitude, when there is no audience to applaud you, no friends to reassure you, no one to distract you from your own doubts. Solitude is where you learn to stand in your own presence and not crumble under the weight of your insecurities. It is where you come face to face with your inner critic, that nagging voice that says you are not enough, and you learn to answer it calmly, firmly, and truthfully. When you can sit alone with your thoughts and feel your fears rise like shadows on the wall, yet not run to someone else to banish them for you, that is when you begin to realize that your backbone is growing. Each time you choose to sit with your discomfort, rather than flee to the nearest distraction, you remind yourself that you are capable of holding your own weight. Confidence built in solitude is different, because it is rooted in self-respect. It does not swagger. It does not shout to be seen. It does not need to be constantly reaffirmed by others, because it is already anchored within. It grows stronger with every small moment you face alone. The night you sit with heartbreak instead of jumping to a rebound. The afternoon you choose to reflect instead of venting to feel heard. The morning you wake up and keep your promises to yourself when no one else is watching. Over time, you start to notice something remarkable. The world's sharp edges cut less deeply when you are strong in solitude. Rejection, which once felt like a mortal wound, becomes just a redirection. Betrayal, which once left you shattered, becomes a lesson that cannot destroy you because you know how to stand alone. Abandonment no longer terrifies you because you understand you do not abandon yourself. Mastering solitude builds a deep loyalty to your own well-being. You learn to listen for the quiet voice that says, "This is not for you," when everyone else is shouting, "This is what you should want." You trust your instincts more. You trust your boundaries. You know you can walk away from people or places that diminish your light because you do not fear the empty space they leave behind. You know how to fill it with your own strength. And this confidence radiates. It changes the way you enter a room. You do not beg to belong. You bring your belonging with you. People sense this. They feel the calm certainty that you will not bend just to be liked. You do not bark or boast to prove your worth. It is evident in how you hold your silence, how you choose your words, how you do not chase what does not nourish you. Many chase confidence in the wrong places, in more friends, more followers, more applause. They do not realize they carry the raw material for true confidence within themselves all along. Solitude is the furnace where this raw material is refined. It melts away your illusions, burns off your excuses, and reveals the solid steel of your spirit underneath. If you want to be unshakable, sit alone. Stay there long enough to know yourself. Stay there long enough to understand your fears without letting them dictate your life. Stay there long enough to discover that even on your worst day, you can hold yourself up. This is how solitude turns into your shield, your anchor, your hidden wellspring of courage. When the world rejects you, as it sometimes will, you do not break. When people betray you, as they sometimes will, you do not fall apart. You bend, you feel the hurt, but you do not lose yourself. Because long before they left, you learned to stand alone. And the one who can stand alone is never truly alone. Most people spend their whole lives trying to escape isolation, terrified that to stand alone is to be cut off from the world. But there is an irony buried in this fear. What we call isolation is often a doorway to the deepest kind of connection. Not with the noise of people and places, but with the vastness that lives both inside us and all around us. When you understand this, solitude stops feeling like a prison and becomes a kind of liberation. It frees you from shallow attachments and false identities, opening a space where you can see how deeply you belong to everything, even when no one is standing beside you. uh, in the rush to always be surrounded, we forget that so much of what makes us feel disconnected comes from living on the surface. We skim through life, our attention scattered like dust in the wind. We're pulled from conversation to conversation, update to update, craving a sense of belonging but rarely finding it. We think connection is found in constant contact, but in truth, it is found in presence. And solitude sharpens presence like nothing else can. When you sit alone long enough, you begin to see how much you have been using others to distract yourself from your own depths. The moment you stop leaning outward, your attention turns inward. At first, this can feel like falling into a void. There is nothing to grab onto, no screens to scroll, no chatter to hide behind. You meet yourself without your masks. You meet the raw silence. And then something miraculous happens. You realize the silence is not empty at all. It is full of thoughts you have never heard clearly before, full of sensations, memories, ideas, and the subtle hum of life itself. As you drop deeper, you begin to notice the fine threads that connect you to everything else. Alone in nature, you feel how the wind brushes your skin, like an ancient greeting. You hear the trees speak in their stillness. You sense how the same life that breathes through the birds and the rivers and the soil is the life that breathes through you. Solitude strips away the clutter and reveals this hidden web. You realize you are not alone. You are woven into something vast, timeless, and intimate beyond words. In this space, you discover that you do not need people to distract you from your sense of separation. You need solitude to dissolve the illusion of separation altogether. You are not a lonely fragment drifting through life. You are a pulse in the heartbeat of something far greater. And this is not an idea you read in a book. It is an experience you feel directly when you are quiet enough to listen. Solitude becomes liberation because it frees you from the lie that your worth depends on constant togetherness. You stop chasing shallow company just to numb your fear of isolation. You stop saying yes to people who drain you because you are terrified of sitting alone in your room. You stop mistaking noise for connection. Instead, you stand rooted in the truth that you are whole, that your belonging is not given by anyone else, but is your birthright, anchored in the simple fact that you exist, that you are alive, that you are aware. From this place, you connect more honestly when you do choose to return to others. You no longer enter relationships from a place of hunger and lack, hoping another person will complete you. You meet them as you are, whole meeting whole. You listen more deeply, speak more clearly, love without clutching. You no longer cling out of fear because you know solitude is not a punishment, but a sanctuary you can return to any time you need to remember who you really are. Those who fear solitude often fear freedom itself. They fear the rawness of meeting themselves without filters. They fear the truth of their own thoughts. But freedom demands that you pass through this fear. It asks you to sit in the quiet wilderness of your own mind until the fear dissolves and something stronger takes its place. A deep trust in your own soul. So do not flee the empty room. Do not run from the silence. Sit with it. Let it strip you of what is false and show you how vast you really are. In doing so, you will see that being alone does not disconnect you. It reconnects you. It plugs you back into the source that no conversation, no crowd, no applause can ever replace. This is the liberation that solitude offers. You no longer fear being alone because you see you are never alone in the way you thought. You are part of the wind, the stars, the quiet rhythm that hums through all things. Once you know this, you carry a secret freedom wherever you go. You walk into any room, any crowd, any empty night with calm certainty that your roots run deeper than loneliness can ever touch. To stand alone is not to stand empty. It is to stand whole. If you have listened closely, you see now that solitude is not a curse but a gateway, not a void but a sanctuary. It is the space where you drop the masks the world asks you to wear and come face to face with the raw, unvarnished truth of who you are. In that quiet encounter, your illusions fall away. The illusion that you must always be surrounded to be worthy. The illusion that your power depends on someone else's praise. The illusion that loneliness is your enemy rather than your teacher. When you master being alone, you master yourself. You discover a depth within you that no rejection can drain, no absence can empty. You realize that your true strength does not come from how many people stand with you when life is easy, but from how calmly you can stand by yourself when life tests you. Solitude becomes the forge where your backbone is shaped, your vision cleared, your loyalty to yourself restored. And something beautiful happens when you stand whole in your own presence. You are free to choose company without clinging, to love without fear, to speak your truth without trembling for approval. You no longer lose yourself in the crowd because you have made a home in your own soul. You become the person who can walk away when you must, stay when you wish, and never be made small by the shifting tides of other people's moods. Remember this: alone does not mean lonely. It means powerful. It means rooted. It means awake to the truth that your worth was never up for negotiation in the first place. You belong to the vastness of life itself, and when you know this deeply, you walk through the world with a quiet certainty no noise can touch. Let the world keep its chatter, its shallow games, its restless hunger for constant company. You have found something richer, the unshakable freedom that waits in your own stillness. Return to it often, guard it fiercely, and carry it with you, so that wherever you stand, whether in a crowded room or an empty field beneath a silent sky, you stand whole, alone, yes, but never less than complete.